by the way, it's why we can't ever get anything done, because they're just sort of equal on each side, and neither will let the other side do anything. Parliamentary system has dozens and dozens of parties. Dozens, some big, some small. The problem in a parliamentary system is that in order to govern, you need a majority of the seats. So in Israel, in the Israeli parliament, there are 120 seats. So, in order to govern, in order to be in charge of the government, you need 61 seats. Now, it's really hard for any one party to get 61 seats. It's very hard. And so what does that party have to do? He has to make coalitions with smaller parties. So let's say my party, I belong to the Likud party, the party that's currently in charge of Israel right now. Likud is L-I-K-U-D. The Likud party, very conservative, hard-right party. They, managed to get, let's say, 51 votes, 51 seats. So they need 10 more seats in order to form a majority. Where do they get those 10 seats? Well, they go to these small parties that have maybe 3 or 4 or 5 seats. And they say, come join our coalition. And they join the coalition, and they get 61 seats, and now they're the government. The problem is that these small parties are, for the most part, these radical, right-wing Eretz Israel parties. Parties that don't have massive public support in Israel. They can barely get maybe 1 or 2 seats in the parliament. And yet, those 1 or 2 seats is enough, because they're now part of this coalition. And if the coalition tries to do anything, let's say the Likud party says, okay, we want a 2-state solution, that one radical party with only 2 seats can say, no thanks, and withdraw from the coalition collapses, the government collapses, and you have to do a new vote again. This has happened so many times that in the last 3 decades, no single Israeli government has ever actually finished a term. Never. They start a term, they get this coalition, they begin to pass laws. One of those laws rubs somebody in the coalition wrong, so they withdraw, the government collapses, you have to start all over again. Brand new election, start over. This has happened every single term for almost 3 decades in Israel. That's where the power of no on the Israeli side comes. 89% say yes, 11% say no, but that 11% can stop any law from passing in Israel simply by withdrawing from the coalition. On the Palestinian side, 79% say yes to this, 21% say no. What's the 21% power? Well, in Israel, the power is the government, but there's no government in Palestine. So the power of that 21%, the veto of that 21% of Palestinians who don't want 2 states, is a suicide bomber. It's as simple as that. You want to put a stop to a conversation? You want to put a stop to a meeting between the Israelis and the Palestinians whose purpose is 2 states? Just blow up a bus. It's over. Conversation over. Peace plan over. And just as in the other side, this has happened repeatedly. I can't tell you how many times over the last 3 decades Israelis and the Palestinians have been very, very close to coming up with some kind of solution, some kind of way to get around this impasse, when all of a sudden some Palestinian blows himself up and a bunch of school children on a bus in Jerusalem. And that's that. The process is over, the discussion is done, back to where we started. Which of course is the purpose. It's the whole purpose of what these suicide bombers are trying to do. So that gives you an understanding about why it is that despite these overwhelming majorities on both sides who want a two-state solution, we still haven't had one yet. Now, because this is a class on religion and politics, I feel like I need to add one extra problem to this issue, one that doesn't get talked about enough, but is equally, if not even more of an obstacle to peace than the Hamas suicide bomber or the radical, right-wing settler. And that is us, the United States of America. This is a country that is about 1/3 evangelical. So it's about 100 million people in the United States. The evangelical movement in the United States, for the most part, has coalesced around a handful of right-wing Christianist organizations. Remember, we've talked about Christianism in this class before. It's Christian religious nationalism. Now, again, this is not everyone, it's not all of them. In fact, honestly, if you just polled these 100 million evangelicals individually, they actually would probably say, yeah, of course, two states living side by side. Of course, that's, peace is better. But unfortunately, the organizations, the Pat Robertsons, the Jerry Falwells, the Mike Evans, the Ted Haggards, the people who actually are the pastors who run these major Christianist movements, Focus on the Family, the Moral Majority, the 700 Club, they have no interest in a two-state solution. In fact, they have been working really hard behind the scenes to make sure that there will never, ever be a Palestinian state, that all of the land will belong to Israel. Why? Not for any political reasons, not because they believe in some sort of political reciprocity or anything like that, but because they have this sort of conception of Christian apocalypticism, another word that we used in this class before. Apocalypticism or eschatology is the study of the end times. Apocalypticism is the study of the apocalypse. Eschatology, the study of the last days. They mean the same thing. But in their sort of warped apocalyptic mindset, they believe that the Bible says, it doesn't, but they believe that the Bible says that if the Jews can come back to Israel and reestablish the kingdom of David and rebuild the temple of Jerusalem, which was destroyed in 70, if they can do that, then that will usher in the end times and Jesus will come back. It's not a joke. They so fully believe this that they have spent billions of dollars in supporting these radical right-wing groups and in supporting the political campaigns of politicians in the United States who also have no interest in a Palestinian state. They have kept the United States from actually being a good bargainer, a real mediator between these two sides, because they don't want mediation. Now, of course, here's the irony of all this. If you believe this apocalyptic viewpoint, what it really means is that the first thing that Jesus does when he comes back is he kills all the Jews. That's what the book of Revelation says. First people to go are the Jews. And of course the Jews, they don't